Hello, I'm Van Jones. I am very happy to welcome you to California Climate Action Day. We're in the middle of Climate Week 2020 here, and I'm excited. We're going to be having a whole day of in-depth discussions, conversations on the key climate issues. We are also kicking off the discussion today with a conversation with my good friend. He's the 40th governor of the state of California. His name is Gavin Newsom. Welcome. Governor, first of all, it's just an honor to see you and be with you. You know, I'm not here wearing any CNN hat or any mainstream media hat. I'm wearing a dad hat, a citizen of California hat, and somebody who's admired your leadership. We are in a real pain point now when it comes to climate. And I'm just wondering, you made a big announcement this week trying to clean up the transportation sector. How do you see the situation we're in with the climate impacts for California, and what do you think this executive order is going to do about it?
Well, I mean, look, the smash mouth realities of climate change are self-evident to anybody that lives here in the state of California, you included, from historic drought that we experienced over a 5-year period to atmospheric rivers, where we're seeing massive amount of rain in a concentrated period of time, flooding as a consequence of that rain, and the burn scars related to historic wildfires. All of those things were predicted. All of those things were projected to happen somewhere in the future, but they've all taken shape in the last number of years. And so that reality is required us to completely think differently about even our audacious goals. And California has long prided itself on leading the nation in many respects in the world in terms of our low carbon green growth goals, but they're simply inadequate to the task at hand, to the reality that we're experiencing. And so the most significant thing I think we can do is accelerate on all fronts those low carbon green growth goals, and none more important than in the transportation sector.
Well, you know, I couldn't agree with you more. And, you know, for me, I'm always looking at the green economy as an opportunity for more work, more wealth, better health, looking at it as a source of jobs and justice. But you know, you have to really walk people through this. I don't think people really understand when you talk about going to clean up the auto fleet, to clean up the trucking fleet, what the steps are, why it's good. Just walk people through this executive order and what you're trying to achieve.
So we just signed an executive order that's first in the nation. And you hear that often when it comes to California, particularly in this space on climate. But I'm very proud of this. It's audacious. I'm not naive. It's controversial, profoundly so, and it's certainly impactful. But it also is incredibly, I think, enlivening in the spirit that you just framed. And that is the ability for California to really set the tone and tenor of innovation as it relates to radically reimagining our transportation sector and mobility going into the future by accelerating change that's already underway. The end of the day, we all know where the puck is going. The proverbial puck is moving towards zero emission vehicles. You've had the largest manufacturers of automobiles in the world, from Ford on down, that have already announced very audacious goals to move away increasingly from the internal combustion engine in order to advance their low carbon goals and to make their fleets more efficient. As a consequence, we're already seeing progress, but not at the pace that we need to see it. And so we want to accelerate that by putting a mandate in place by 2035 that no vehicles purchased in the state of California can be internal combustion vehicles, meaning no longer will California sell dirty vehicles. We are going to accelerate innovation, accelerate manufacturing, accelerate the creation of green jobs, accelerate our competitiveness and our ability to export, and set the tone and tenor to a brighter, cleaner future by requiring all vehicles to be zero emission vehicles. Whatever those zero emission vehicles look like, we want to set that goal firmly 15 years from today.
You know, what's remarkable about that is that, first of all, about half of the pollution, half of the emissions in California, it's not the power plants, it's just the cars and the trucks. So if you can just get the cars and the trucks to stop polluting, then you've suddenly taken out half of the emissions. And so it's a really big step that you're taking. I want to get to some of the critics, some of the downsides, but I want to make sure we first get it, we first understand. So you signed this executive order. you're saying that if you want to sell a car in this state in 15 years from now, it's got to either be a fuel cell, it's got to be electric. It just can't be spitting out a whole bunch of pollution and poison 15 years from now, seeing where we are today.
Look, we're burning up this state. Historic, record, unprecedented wildfire season as I speak. And by the way, this is changing by the minute, not just the hour and the day and the month. But as I speak to you, 3.6 million acres have burnt up this year so far in the state of California. We are choking up the air quality, the orange hues, the sunless days that we're experiencing in this state. We are heating up. We had a record August, the hottest record in history of this state, the hottest recorded record temperature in the history of this country, arguably the world, 130 degrees in the state of California a month or so ago in Death Valley. This reality, it's observed evidence. Even if you don't believe science, you got to believe your own eyes. It requires us to completely think much more aggressively and comprehensively. And you can't be serious about climate change in the state of California unless you're serious about the transportation sector for exactly the reason you said. It's over 50%. When you look all in, the cost of transportation in terms of the greenhouse gases, it's over 50% of all the greenhouse gas emissions. So you want to play small ball. Focus in other areas. You want to play big ball. You want to go bold and big. You've got to decarbonize our transmission sector. And in so doing, not only do you save taxpayers untold billions of dollars in fuel and maintenance costs, but you accelerate manufacturing, job creation, export opportunities. You create economic opportunities that would otherwise never be present, and you clean up your air, you detoxify our air and water, and you improve health and lower costs in the healthcare system at the same time. It would be absolutely imprudent not to move in this direction.
Well, yeah, I think part of what you're saying is the egalitarian aspect of it. There's also the practical aspect of it in terms of health. If you want to take the asthma inhalers out of little kids' pockets, you've got to move in the direction you're talking about. It's the bottom line. But there's also an economic piece here. A lot of the electrical vehicle production is happening in California right now anyway. So in some ways, you're kind of helping a native industry. Also, you're creating a bigger market, which makes it economically smart.
Yeah, policy accelerates innovation, and good public policy has accelerated the adaptation of electric vehicles. Close to 50% of all electric vehicles in America are now purchased in the state of California. So we're seeing the adaptation and the adoption of this technology. 34 manufacturing companies in the state of California, market cap of over $500 billion. Already 34 manufacturers in the state of California producing electric vehicles, 60 companies that are on the leading and cutting edge. It's our second biggest export already in the state of California. We're barely winding up. Imagine where we can be with this executive order codified by the California Air Resources Board. By the way, Van, a board that was established by a Republican who was sitting exactly a stone's throw away from where I'm sitting right here, not that many years ago in the late 60s, working with another Republican, Nixon, in 1970, where they advanced the California Air Resources Board and the Clean Air Act that allowed California to accelerate its policymaking and advance its low carbon goals. And so it's been a bipartisan effort because people recognize when you're cleaning up your air, you're improving health, and you're improving your economic competitiveness. We've always recognized that. Only as of late have we seen this hyper politicalization of this space that's really divided this country in ways that is so damaging both to our economy and to our public health.
Well, let's get after some of it now, because we're both cheerleaders for it. But there are critics, there are concerns. Let me start throwing some of these criticisms at you. First of all, what if 15 years from now I've got a car? Maybe I got the car I have right now. It's a combustible engine. Are you going to come take my car?
No car is being taken. You can still sell your car in the used car market. You can still go to those old, beautiful used car dealers and purchase secondary cars. And so there'll still be a market. We're not coming to take your cars. The average life of these cars is about 15 years. People will still be able to sell their cars. People will not see their registration taken away. It just requires a different market in a state that can move markets for the rest of the country in order to create more choice and to give not just the environmental movement, but to give the next generation more choice in terms of their capacity to live their lives out loud in the nation's largest state. And so, look, we really believe foundationally and firmly, this is an incredible economic opportunity for no other reason than consider this fact. Currently, as I'm speaking to you, the number of green tech jobs, green jobs in California outnumber fossil fuel jobs 5-1. This debate is over. The alternative fuel are fossil fuels. We have already turned the page, and now we have an opportunity to accelerate a cleaner, brighter, more sustainable future in a way that creates innovation and advances our entrepreneurial spirit, that doesn't take away anything that you have today, will actually accelerate the choices that you'll have available tomorrow.
Well, let me, again, you talk about the partisanship. One thing that you hear from the president is, hey, look, you guys want a Green New Deal, you want green this, you want green that. If they look out there with Gavin Newsom, he's got green everything, and they had, brownouts and blackouts. Is this, a valid criticism coming from the other side that when we do all this green stuff, sometimes it doesn't work out the right way? Or how do you see it?
Yeah, I see. We're just getting started. I mean, at the end of the day, we focused on the why. Decades ago, we started to recognize we needed to do better, and we recognized the value proposition for a planet that's heating up and ice melt and the issues related to sea acidification, ocean acidification, and sea level rise. We then started to focus on what's the mechanism, creating a cap and trade program, putting out audacious goals. We are now just getting started on the how. We're starting to implement. And what this executive order does is exactly that. It applies some reconcilable framework where we can actually implement our ideals and manifest them. So we've been, I'll be honest with you, even in California, we've set audacious goals, but we've been playing in the margins. And so everything that we've created to date is nothing compared to what we can do and create tomorrow if we accelerate and advance the implementation and the application of these ideals.
Let me just take another pass at that question. I got one more, and then I got other more fun stuff to talk about. But when Trump tries to point to our blackouts here and our brownouts here as a reason that if he blames it on solar panels, is he right, or is it more complicated answer than that?
He's simply wrong, and it's profoundly more complicated. The experience we had over a 2-night period, and that was a 2-night period affecting about a little over 1% of the population in the state of California, was impacted because of a heat dome, an unprecedented heat dome over the entire west coast of the United States. That 130-degree temperature, record-breaking temperature in California, was part of that experience. It put so much intensity on the entire grid in the West Coast that a lot of the imports that we count on coming from out of state, in state, were suspended because of the energy utilization in those other states, both in the Pacific Northwest, as well as states like Nevada, where we rely on bringing in more energy. We produce an abundance of solar energy and wind energy, but what we need to do is advance our technologies and battery storage so that we can absorb those extremes. And so in every way, shape, or form, that was a reminder of how critical it is that we fast track the application implementation so that we have more reliable energy and we can withstand the extremes that are likely to be very much part of, not the exception, but the normalcy of the world that we're about to enter into.
It's amazing when you think about how much energy we can produce on a renewable basis, wind power, solar power, et cetera. Storage, though, is the key. And if you push hard enough on having zero emission vehicles, batteries are going to take off. In other words, you've now got a massive market. The same battery technology you're going to use to make all these vehicles work can also be used to stabilize the grid. Is that a part of the reasoning here?
And the architecture of our entire low carbon green growth strategy is electricity. And you're absolutely right. Again, when you establish goals and policy, you move markets and you accelerate innovation and change. Just today, Tesla came out with groundbreaking results of all of their engineering work on batteries, accelerating battery production, accelerating capacity and life of these batteries, driving down the cost. We're already seeing those cost curves collapse in terms, just in the last few years, the cost of wind, the cost of solar, and we're seeing the same thing now with battery storage technology. And in fact, California, just a few weeks ago, we announced the largest battery storage facility in the world, headquartered again in our state. Look again at this. This is the greatest economic opportunity. It's just sitting there waiting for enlightened leaders of all political stripes. Countries around the world get it. China gets it.
Yeah, they get it for real.
India gets it. Israel gets it. Denmark gets it. Ireland gets it. What the hell is wrong with the United States of America, save the fact we have leaders that simply don't?
Yeah. Well, listen, speaking about who gets to get it, that's my last question on this is just, what about people who say, listen, that's great, electrical cars or whatever, but, I don't see any electrical charging stations in my community. I don't know how I'm going to be able to access this. I'm African-American, I'm Latino, I'm low income, I'm in the red part of the state. Is this just for the green elite, or how do I get a chance to be a part of this?
No, in fact, we don't do anything without equity in our lens. Our entire mantra when it comes to economic development is growth and inclusion. And we have failed as a nation to address that inclusion frame. And so I would never conceive of something that wasn't primarily advantaging those that have been disadvantaged from the fossil fuel economy. They have to be included. And no one, by the way, I mean, you've quite literally been one of the world's leaders in this space, recognizing this is one of the great opportunities for Black and brown communities that we've ever had. And so the framework for us is self-evident that the cost, the price parity on alternative fuel vehicles is beginning to take shape. We're within a few years of that price parity coming into focus. In 15 years, it's going to be much more competitive. And the cost of maintenance, the cost of operating will be the biggest benefit to low-income communities. The opportunity to detoxify our air and water, the biggest benefit from an environmental justice perspective, from those that are trapped in urban environments and urban poverty, and for the elderly that are suffering disproportionately from our dirty air. In fact, California has the dirtiest air in the world. You can't even make it up. California, rather, in this country. 6 of the 10 top cities that are most polluted are in the state of California. So we have an obligation, moral, ethical obligation, as well as an economic imperative to advance these efforts to help address those justice issues at the same time we advance our economic competitiveness.
Well, I think that's really important. Part of the thing I've been trying to get people to see, since we started working on this stuff in 2004, back when you were mayor, at the UN World Environment Day. I got a chance to work with you on that, and we've been, I think it's unbelievable the progress we've made, and yet the pain is still here. One of the things that I think is key for people to understand is, for communities that are not succeeding in the pollution-based economy economically, not succeeding in the poison-based economy when it comes to agriculture, this is a huge opportunity to begin succeeding in this green economy, because somebody's got to put up those solar panels. Somebody's got to install all those EV stations. That's work. Those are contracts. That's entrepreneurial opportunity. Nobody's going to be, establishing any new coal mines anytime soon, but we could, we've got the opportunity to establish all kinds of new businesses on this side of it. And so I applaud what you're doing.
Well, Ben, you said it better than anybody else back in 2004. I think you were the first one to say you can't outsource a home by shipping it over to China to have solar panels put on top of the damn roof. And so again, from a domestic manufacturing, domestic production, from an export perspective, all the things that, particularly post-pandemic, where we recognize our vulnerability in terms of global supply chains, what an opportunity to bring back that competitive spirit, that manufacturing spirit back to America. And so again, in all these components, this is an incredible opportunity.
Well, let me move on to a couple other topics. Let's talk about fracking. That's an issue that you've expressed some real concern about. It's tricky though. It's complicated. How do you see this fracking issue, and what do you want to do about the fracking conversation in the country?
Yeah, it's also very emotional because we attach so much to it symbolically, not just substantively. In California, it's less than 2% of our total production. So in and of itself, it becomes more symbolic than it is substantive, though it is nonetheless substantive. And so in this same executive order, we're not just talking about demand. but we have to talk about demand. We're also talking about a phased shift in supply, a just transition where we can move away from fracking and we can begin a much more accelerated drawdown in terms of keeping more oil and fossil fuel in the ground. And so we call in the executive order over the next 3 years to phase out fracking in the state of California. I've got to get legislative support to do that. And so we're calling for that. We want to see that happen, and we want to begin that drawdown quickly. And we want to make sure we're phasing opportunities to create real economic alternatives for folks that are displaced in that transition. We really have to reconcile. If you don't address demand, even with a reduction in supply, and by the way, since the 1980s, since 1985, we have reduced oil production in California by almost 56%, but we haven't reduced demand. And what's happened is domestic oil production's dropped 55%, but we've been importing from Colombia, Ecuador, and Saudi Arabia that, trust me, don't care much about labor standards or environmental standards. And so it's actually perversely increasing our carbon footprint globally. And that's why demand has to happen as we reduce supply.
Look, I think that's an important thing. And I want to give you an opportunity to talk about this on the human side of this in a second. But I mean, I don't think people understand how much, we stop pulling oil out of the ground. Sometimes we pull it over the border because if we don't change the way that we're doing things, if we don't change how much oil we need, just because you stop it from coming out of the ground doesn't stop it from coming over the border. And so what you're doing is actually, my favorite kind of stuff, you're going after the root cause, it seems to me. If the root cause is we got cars that are thirsty for dirty oil, whether it comes out of California or whether it comes over the border, get rid of the cars in a smart way. Am I understanding this correctly? Is this, in some ways, sometimes we do stuff that's so simple that you don't really understand the knockoff effects in terms of taking asthma inhalers out of kids' pockets and stopping oil from coming out of the ground or over the border, because we don't need it here. We're doing it different.
Exactly. And that's why, look, it's why we're also fighting the Trump administration. By the way, Van, 55 environmental lawsuits in 3.5 years with the Trump administration. This is unprecedented. 55 here in the state of California. But one of them, profoundly important, something you worked on when you were in the administration, and that was President Obama, Vice President Biden adopted California's vehicle standards as it relates to miles per gallon or miles per gallon equivalent to about 47 plus miles in 2025. Trump wants to roll it back to 37 miles. And we have a coalition of states that have joined our effort, including 6 companies, some of the largest auto manufacturing companies that want to see higher standards so we can do precisely what it is that you wisely observe needs to be done. And that's reduce consumption as we reduce the production of oil and fossil fuels at the same time, so we could truly make an impact and dent, not just domestically, but globally.
The complexity of what you're dealing with in the middle of the reality. Now, this is not speculative anymore. You're dealing with the reality of the climate crisis in our face. You have places in California that may be as hot as Venus right now. So we now live on a different planet than one we were born on, frankly.
Yeah.
And then you're trying to balance and deal with all of these different interests. You want to push down on the production, but you want to do it in a way responsible for the workers. You want to create economic opportunity, but you want to do it in a way that's inclusive. This is hard, man. This is hard.
I love that you said that, because you're being honest with people. This is not sound bites, not bumper stickers. It's easy to sit there and advocate on the sideline, but there's a grit here. There's a resolve, a commitment, there's nuance, there's details, there's policy, there's politics, there's friction, there's division, there's consequences to every action that impact things that have nothing to do with that subject matter that then are impacted because of the political influence and forces. There's referendum on what you're doing, there's lawsuits on what you're doing, there's pushback electorally, there's politics within your own party, not just within the other party. There's a national and international frame. And so all of this has to be considered. And again, that's what we're hired to do. We have to be practitioners. But I don't want, and I love the fact you bring this up with a learnedness, that there is a pragmatism that has to come with this. And so it's important that we all are resolved but we also are, I think, honest with one another about the role and responsibility we all have to play, and the process that is profoundly important to reconcile as well.
I just want to thank you for being honest. In other words, most politicians will tell you, oh yes, blah, 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 and they'll give you a bunch of lip service. But you said, listen, I don't know. And I'm going to spend money to find out because I want to be able to look people in the eye and give them an honest answer. I think, look, obviously I love you. I think that you're great. But I'm telling you, as somebody who I'm on the national stage dealing with all kind of political leaders, I don't think we do a good enough job, and I appreciate you spending the time helping citizens and community members understand how we're going to get there. It's not snapping a finger. It's not you don't have legal, frankly, I was going to beat you up a little bit on the fracking thing because you don't have the legal authority to do some of this stuff, but you said, I'm going to legislature. See, that's what, listen, catch that. I don't have the legal authority to do it. I'm going to go to legislature. I don't know. I'm going to study. This is the kind of stuff that we need to hear from more of our leaders so we can all work together a little bit better. But just understand, I don't think there is a better person in the world to be in your seat right now dealing with this sort of stuff. California is the size of, as bigger than most countries. The economy is bigger than most countries. And you're trying to deal with the middle of a pandemic and inferno and all kind of Book of Revelation crap. And I just want to appreciate you for showing leadership when it counts. So.
I appreciate it. Reciprocity is in order, Van, because Lee, we literally met in this, right? We were in the midst of a recognition and reconciliation around a lack of national leadership back in the early part of 2000 as we were pulling away from Kyoto. And by the way, remember, people forget, I think it was I don't know, don't quote me, but I think it was like 96 to nothing in the Senate to reject Al Gore, your former boss, efforts in Kyoto to sign those protocols. Democrats didn't believe it was possible to grow your economy and reduce your greenhouse gas emissions. So we're all a little culpable on this. We can act holier than thou. We can act as if we're above it, but we're, I think, just starting to recognize that this is not a binary conversation. It's not an either or, it's an and. In California, look, power of emulation, success leaves clues. And if we can take the nation's 5th largest economy, or whether the world's 5th largest economy, and we can prove something, not just assert something, I think we'll have a profound impact on this debate internationally, not just nationally.
Look, on behalf of the young people right now who don't have jobs, who are going to have green jobs because of this stuff, on behalf of people who would have died of lung cancer and everything else, who are going to be able to live a few years longer, on behalf of a state that could lead the world in the pain, which is what we're doing right now, but it's going to lead the world in the promise. I want to thank you. And I am proud to be a Californian. I am proud to be one of your constituents. And let's keep talking about how we can make things better together, brother.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Van. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, man. Good stuff.
Awesome.